Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Charlie Goody. I'm the Content Marketing Manager at Cision UK and I'll be running you through today's session. Today we're excited to bring you When Gross Becomes Mainstream, the story behind the Whitechapel Fatberg. This webinar shares the story and results of the successful media campaign surrounding a Fatberg found in London sewers. The news stories centred around the 130-tonne Whitechapel Road Fatberg reached more than 150 countries, including the United States, Australia and Germany. It captured imaginations, shocked and disgusted audiences, and got people everywhere talking about what happens next to their waste. So a few housekeeping bits before we dive in. We're live tweeting using the hashtag Whitechapel Fatberg, so keep an eye on the Cision UK Twitter handle and get involved in the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. On24 is a platform used to broadcast this webinar. You don't need to worry about muting your line or hearing background noise from other participants. And if you look around your On24 suite, there are a host of different features to utilise during the webinar. The most important one that I'd like to highlight is the Q&A widget on your left-hand side. So if you have any questions throughout, feel free to ask them in this side panel and we'll answer as many as possible during the Q&A at the end. These slides and recordings will also be available on demand after the live webinar. So to kick things off, we're going to start with a poll. So you should have a pop-up on your screen now. And we just want to ask the question, do you know what a Fatberg is? We'll give you a few seconds to answer that. And we'll get back to the results in a minute. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our speakers for today. We're joined by Stuart White and Alex Saunders from Thames Water. Stuart White is Head of Media Relations and spokesperson for Thames Water, Britain's biggest water company, serving 15 million customers across London and the Thames Valley. He's best known for leading the team powering the monster Whitechapel Fatberg story around the world. Prior to Thames Water, White began his career as a sports reporter covering the Athens Olympics in 2004. He also freelanced for publications such as Daily Mail, Metro and London Light. Alex is a senior operations manager with over 8 years of experience in the water and wastewater industry. In addition to guaranteeing the safe delivery of wastewater services to millions of customers, he is also one of Thames Water's main media spokespeople and was the face of the Whitechapel Fatberg news sensation. Thank you both for joining us. Before I hand it over to you, let's just check on our poll results. Okay, so we've got 85.5% know what a Fatberg is. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Stuart, to talk a bit more.
Thanks very much, Charlie, and thank you all for joining. For those who do know what a Fatberg is, then I make no apology. You know exactly what you're getting yourself into. For those who don't, I apologise now if any of these images put you off your dinner tonight, and you may want to just keep a cushion handy. So I'm hoping that what you're seeing here is the inside the sewer. This is inside the sewer below Whitechapel Road, going back to 2017. This is the Fatberg, and you'll see in a minute that the Fatberg is not alone. Okay, so there's the rat, and this is the rat that really helped boost the coverage. This here is the gruesome and rancid 130-tonne lump of fat, oil, wet wipes, nappies, and other unflushables that are discovered in the East End Victorian sewer. It runs the length of 2 Wembley football pitches, is a modern-day human creation. It's the original beast from the East. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the monster Whitechapel Road Fatberg. I'm sure you've had enough of seeing that now. So this was not the first Fatberg that Thames Water had ever experienced. So we had a 15-tonne double-decker bus-sized blob discovered in Kingston in 2013. One the length of a Boeing 747 took off in Shepherd's Bush a year later. And last year we had a 40-tonner in Greenwich and 100 tonnes worth just before Christmas in Pall Mall in the city. But there was something dark and mysterious about this evil beast found in Jack the Ripper territory And it was absolutely enormous, the biggest, 130 tons, 2 Wembley football pitches long. It was the perfect combination, a bit like cooking fat and wet wipes that stick and congeal together in the sewers and form these fatbergs. And journalists from around the world charged to Whitechapel Road to get the story. The first person they met was Alex. So Alex, do you want to just give a recap of what it was actually like that first day on the scene?
Yeah, and of course, like the all too common occurrence of blockages and fatbergs on our network, of course, we didn't know it was going to be anywhere near the story that it turned out to be. So it was very much got a call from Stuart's team, got ourselves to London and just started covering it in the usual way with the usual lines around our bin it, don't block it message, putting the 3 Ps down the toilet, poo, pee and toilet paper and nothing else, and very much felt like a normal story that we might cover. But as we know, it then very rapidly turned into something different as the interest grew and grew beyond what we've ever seen before.
That's right, yeah. News eventually reached around 1 billion people from more than 150 countries. That includes America, Australia, Russia, Germany, but crazy places like Chile, Greenland, Zambia, Papua New Guinea. It was just incredible, the web searches that were coming through. And here in Whitechapel, a new celebrity was born, and within a week, it became an A-list celebrity. It captured imaginations, it shocked and disgusted, and I think that was key. And it got people everywhere talking about what happens next to their waste. Probably for the first time, it's just something you don't really think about. And as I said, it's not the first fatberg, and we already had this word. So fatberg is a word invented by Thames Water, and we've used it to bring the very serious problem of sewer abuse to life. Again, there's another disgusting picture of the fatberg, and you can just see there how that's built up. That should be a circular sewer, and at the moment it's sort of semicircle at best. So we created this monster, something to fear and something to talk about. And the word is now known around the world and is in the dictionary, along with WFH, I believe, which has gone in today. And fatberg will also legally score you 13 points on the Scrabble pre-bonus. And Whitechapel still appears in the media now, and this is particularly good for us because during the coronavirus outbreak and lockdown, we've seen some new challenges. So especially around what is flushed down the toilets. We saw at the start the toilet roll shortages. So people were turning to kitchen roll wet wipes. People are using more wet wipes for cleaning surfaces. And even newspapers, copies of the Daily Mail going down the toilet as people look for substitutes. So this has given us another reason to raise the profile of the campaign. And Alex will talk about the live impact later on. So I'm just going to cover now how we launched the story. So September the 12th, 2017, I gave it exclusively to the Evening Standard. We wanted to talk directly to Londoners, and the expectation was that once they published, others would soon follow. I gave it to them on the Friday. They sat on it on the Monday before releasing it on the Tuesday. As Alex said, we knew it was big, but we had no idea what would happen next. Once it went up online, the phones just lit up and the story sparked a huge rush. Film crews were arriving in Whitechapel Road that day and for the rest of the week. And key for me in keeping the interest, although we had quite a lot of good material to work with, or a lot of material to work with, key was having the images. So this is the very first image we used, which shows the sewer completely plugged out. We had that video from inside the sewer featuring our friend the rat, which again just added a new dimension, and good spokesperson. This really brought the story to life. And Alex, you were the man giving in the first interviews.
That's right, and like I touched on earlier, we started off with what I'd call the classic fatberg story, trying to remind our customers what they shouldn't and shouldn't put down the toilet, what it is and how it's formed. But it turned from just that first day on site to then day 2, day 3, and Stuart and I found ourselves on the train to London, really thinking about how we were going to keep this story going, because we had, real momentum. And this was at a time in the news when the press were not short on news stories. I think there was an election at the time. There were terrorist attacks. There were some really big stories going on, and we managed to really move away from the sort of standard Fatberg coverage that we may have traditionally done, and to start to spin the story with different angles and using different language, to be fair.
Yeah, we used more, as we got more confident and more trust in the media and the way it was being reported, we started to use more colourful, more daring language. And another key thing for me was that the reporters could actually smell it from the side of the road. We would ask the team working down there to just bring a chunk up, and they would get a hacksaw and they'd saw through it, and the smell. I mean, the people always want to know what it smells like. It really can only be described as rotting meat and like composting festival toilets. It's damp, and it is actually alive. The Fatberg is alive down there. And the smell of fat, it gets up into your nostrils, and you never really ever forget it. The team who work down there, who go home with it, getting it out of there, it's really is as tough as it gets down there. And the teams deserve a lot of credit for the work they do. Even now, during the lockdown, our key workers are still out there keeping London flowing, both on the waste and on the water side. And here is Alex. And as we said, there was a huge rush to Whitechapel Road. And in the end, it became a bit of a distraction, to be honest. And in the end, we decided that to push ahead with the story and to maintain and to keep what we needed out of it, the best thing to do was to move across to another Fatberg and a block sewer in Chinatown. This allowed the team to get on with the job. And it gave us another advantage, which was being able to get journalists into the sewer. Whitechapel was slightly too small to get people down. Chinatown, slightly bigger. There was a nice platform. We were able to drop journalists down. They could stand there and see a Fatberg for themselves, which, again, just gave the story a new boost. And as it grew, there was just this real buzz about it. People were talking about the Fatberg in the pub, in the office. Have you seen it? And Alex, people walking past in Chinatown.
Absolutely. It was... for me, it wasn't really about some of the major coverage that Stuart will go on to. It was about some of those unexpected moments. I remember we were in Chinatown. I think it was a Swedish family were obviously on their holiday, and the children didn't speak much English, but the one word they did know without being prompted was Fatberg, as they tried to peer over the barriers into the abyss below. We had some American tourists sort of bound over and go, gee, is this the Fatberg? And taking photos of it as if it were, just one of the many London landmarks that they'd come to see. And I've got plenty of friends as well that live in London that said that during those few weeks, during their commute, when they picked up the Evening Standard or when they opened Time Out magazine, there was the Fatberg story, and said that, they just couldn't avoid it for those few weeks that the story ran and ran and ran.
That's right. And there was millions of mentions on social media as well as in the media. It was everywhere. It was simply one of the most disgusting things imaginable. And I think, no doubt, that many people felt quietly guilty about contributing to the problem. Has anybody on here flushed a wet wipe? I mean, obviously I'm not expecting an answer to that, but I think that was really important. It hit a nerve. Some people didn't realise what they were doing was wrong, because these wipes, when you flush them, they will go down the toilet. And once we had everybody's attention, with this story, we just had to keep it moving. We had Victoria in London. Angles on the story included how the Fatberg was being converted into biodiesel, how we're working with food establishments to trap fat in the kitchen and cut off the Fatberg's food supply. The Museum of London exhibition, hopefully some of you got to see that, and I think you can still view the Whitechapel Road Fatberg on the webcam from the Museum of London. And then another turning point, Radio 1's Greg James reporting live from the Fatberg. Again, our language got more entertaining, more risky, which is not the normal approach for Thames Water by any stretch, especially when it comes down to talking about water supply. We have to be very straight and very serious. But with the Fatbergs, anything went there, really. I've seen a question from Nadine there. Maybe I'll catch up. Maybe I'll pick up that later on. But yeah, we got more and more entertaining, more risky. We kept shooting our own videos for social media. Fatberg then started to appear in other cities, in Baltimore, in Vancouver, Melbourne, Liverpool. And we just followed this all the way through to the last piece removed under the headline, "We've won the battle, but the war on Fatbergs continues." Another key thing, so this guy here is Vince, the singing sewer man, and he actually sang live on the Greg James Radio 1 show. We had John, Chris, and then we had Natalie, a guy called Manhole, and this is Natalie here. And she actually became known as Natberg. Greg James christened her Natberg because of the Fatberg. And these real on-the-ground people just kept adding more and more dimensions. And I think what came across was that people that work for Thames Water really do care, and that shone through in the coverage we had. And these characters have also gone on to be the face of follow-up campaigns called Superheroes. And I believe this approach has resonated with customers. So going back, I mean, the results, as we've touched on, were incredible. It was the most coverage you've ever known, and with no spend whatsoever. We didn't pay a penny for any of this coverage. The image here is really just a snapshot after about the second week of all the coverage we were getting. In the end, we just gave up. We just couldn't keep up with it all. But versions of the story appeared 7 times in the Evening Standard over a 5-week period. It was most read on the BBC News website on the day we released the story. It was covered by all the nationals, all the radio stations, TV. There's a Channel 4 feature by Kathy Newman, which is really worth a watch on YouTube. Just search Kathy Newman and Fatberg. And here's Greg with Natalie or Natberg and some of the team in Chinatown. And when he did his show, it was the top worldwide Twitter entertainment moment story. He's got around 5 million listeners, or he did have at the time. It was on his drive time show. And Greg actually called it one of the most ludicrous things he's ever done. And going back about a year, he said it was the thing that most people want to talk to him about first when they first meet. Natalie was on the show about 6 or 7 times talking about Fatbergs. We had a Radio 5 Live Fatberg video, which was viewed more than 1 million times on Facebook in one weekend. And then Fatberg started to appear on quiz shows like Have I Got News for You and Mock the Week. We then started going to sort of Hollywood blockbuster territory, and we had the Fatberg autopsy. So we'd had the sort of clips, the news pieces. We then had an hour-long documentary on Channel 4. And again, this trended on Twitter and had over 1 million views. These guys here, they kind of cut into the Fatberg to understand exactly what was in it. And I remember we had to get bags and bags of Fatberg to them to be able to sort of carry it out with scientists. It was just relentless, really, and non-stop fascination. We must have lost around 2 months on the story, but it was absolutely brilliant to be leading and to see the success. And it continues to be referenced now. So one of my favourite pieces, which is going to be available for you all to see in the resources section, is an extremely graphic film by David Schuckman on BBC News at 10, which had 4 million live viewers. I've heard this described as a horror film or a war film, so do be warned. But it's on YouTube, and the link is in your resources film. This guy here is called Chris. He is being pulled out of. Take a look at that if you feel like it.
So if we move it on to, so if we move on as to sort of, well, why do we even want to be talking about Fatbergs? Well, as a business, especially on the wastewater side of it, our bin it but don't block it campaign aims to let people know what should and shouldn't be flushed down the toilet and poured down the sink. And the objective is to raise awareness of the problem and help change customer behaviour, reducing the number of blockages and ultimately the total misery of sewer flooding in people's homes, businesses and pollutions to the environment. Often people really don't think about these consequences until it's happened to them, especially when they're flushing things other than human waste and toilet paper down the toilet. So the reality in terms of what we do every day is that 8 times every single hour, one of our 15 million customers suffers a blockage caused by sewer abuse, so caused by things that shouldn't be in the sewer network. The blockage, it stops the flow of sewage and sends it right back to where it came from, which is either your bathroom or your kitchen. The more fatbergs there are, the more damage they cause. So this results in us having to, in some cases, take really severe action to get access to the sewers and get them out of there, sometimes even digging up roads to fix the broken sewers. And of course, all of this causes a huge disruption and expense to our customers, especially in cities like London. And when responding to those blockages alone, we spend £18 million a year just to respond to those blockages reactively. We then spend even more money trying to proactively get ahead of it and educate our customers on why they should only be putting the 3 Ps down the toilet: poo, pee, and toilet paper. And the story made it very clear that it's a collective responsibility and that the sewers are just not an abyss for household rubbish. And this is very much the approach we take with our domestic customers. We want to educate them. We want them to feel part of the service that we provide, that essential service. And that's something that our customers are really appreciating at the moment during the COVID-19 crisis. And Whitechapel just basically allowed us to raise the profile of the problem caused by sewer abuse. So what about its legacy? Well, first off, it has quite a legacy. First off, we left this commemorative manhole in place, which serves as a permanent reminder in Whitechapel Road. So if any of you are interested in going and taking a picture of your feet stood by the manhole, it's just outside the tube station in the market, just as you walk out to the main road. It's had its own exhibition in the Museum of London. The Fatberg inspired a student exhibition, and in New York City's in New York City itself, it inspired their "Trash It, Don't Flush It" campaign. We think ours is slightly better. And it's part of everyday language, as Stuart said, and that conversation is still going strong. So if we tried to think about, well, it's all great, you had all this media coverage, but what have some of the results been? Well, if we look across the wider impact on sewer abuse overall, we've seen that blockages are down roughly 7% overall, and that's an improving picture. And in areas where we've concentrated our Bin It, Don't Block It campaign with targeted customer advertising, and we target that based on areas of our network where we know there is a higher risk of internal flooding and pollutions, we see even bigger benefits of the scale of more, sort of 20%. And this is a start, and we're growing that Bin It, Don't Block It campaign. We're growing our schools education program to reach every single child in our area. We're increasing our proactive sewer cleaning program, which is obviously an intervention just after the wet wipes and those kind of things have gone down the sewer, unfortunately, but again, to prevent the flooding and pollutions. And we're also taking enforcement activities against law-breaking sewer abusers that run businesses like food service establishments that can be really high producers of fats, oils and greases. Another key step forward is the far louder call for improved labelling on wet wipes. So public pressure was growing and the water industry is working together on a longer-term solution. So saying they're flushable is one thing, but most of them don't break down once they're in the sewers. The companies are very much marking their own homework on this front. And I particularly remember, sort of 2+ years ago, doing plenty of media interviews where I would get read a statement from these companies that it's not their wet wipes that are causing the problem, it's someone else's. And we urged the industry at that time, our response was, innovate your way out of this problem. And so we've had progress. And now we've got the first fine to flush standard, which hit our shelves last year. And this is the only standard approved by water companies. And the majority of our big manufacturers still don't meet this standard. So the chances are that if you're looking at a packet of wet wipes in a supermarket, it's not okay to flush down the toilet. The fact is that most of these wet wipes are also full of plastic. They're used once, and even if they don't get flushed down the loo, they are a single-use plastic, and that is harmful to the environment. So whether they end up in the sewers, on a beach, in landfill, or choking a fish in our rivers, they are a problem and a nuisance and a blight. You wouldn't put a plastic bag down the loo, so why do you think it's okay to flush a plastic wet wipe? And you really don't need me to tell you that the world is waking up to the damage that plastic can cause to our environment.
That's right, Alex. And, the campaign, the Bin It, Don't Block It campaign, never ends. We're about to relaunch again on Monday with a new angle. But so really, just to summarise now on Whitechapel and the success and why it became a media success, in my opinion, it's that we created a word. We turned that word into a monster and brought it to life using real, passionate spokespeople. It then became a celebrity due to its size, due to its location. We got more daring with the language and took risks. We kept the story moving by changing the news angle. We opened up the sewers as well for this total Fatberg experience and gave reporters the smell, just added colour to what they were talking about. We had good photography and video, and we also had the global interest in Victorian London to work with, and the undeniable yuck factor. But, as Alex just said, we must never forget Fatbergs are like monsters from the deep. They're lurking and growing under our feet. And they're also a vivid reminder to us all that out of sight is not gone forever. So please help us protect the environment and keep London's sewers flowing. Bin your fat and wipes and don't feed the Fatberg. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you both. That was a really interesting and educational presentation, so thank you. And thank you to the audience for submitting your questions. We've had a few good ones come in, so let's take a look at some now. I'll start with this one. Alex, how has the coronavirus had an impact on the sewers?
Really interesting. It's had a really big impact on us at Thames as a starter. We are classified as key workers, a tier two responder in terms of how the government sees us. And so, that doesn't necessarily mean just the urgent and the emergency work, but it means our teams are doing a hell of a lot of work to make sure that that absolutely essential service, more now than ever, be it from everyone working from homes or isolated at home, right through to the new Nightingale Hospital in London, to making sure that no one ever has to think twice about turning on the taps to get that clean water and being able to flush the toilet. And we've seen some really interesting trends across the business in terms of, suddenly there's lots of people not commuting into London. So we found that we've had to supply more drinking water in Thames Valley and less in certain areas of London and stuff like that. When you get into the waste network side of the business, so the sewers, unfortunately, it's not been a great news story. So you'll all have seen in the news the toilet roll rushing off the shelves and people not being able to get hold of it. And unfortunately, people can't stop going to the toilet. So they've been using things other than that approved toilet paper. And so what we've seen is in areas where we've been targeting our media campaigns, our Bin It, Don't Block It program, where we've seen in those areas, those kind of 20% type drops in blockages, we've basically seen that benefit kind of eaten away to only leave us at a sort of 2-3% benefit. And in areas where we haven't been targeting that campaign, we've seen the levels of blockages rise. And as I explained earlier, the more blockages we have, the greater risk of flooding people's homes with sewage and polluting the environment. And of course, at this time, the last thing we want to be doing is flooding people's homes with sewage. And of course, when that happens, our team, being able to make sure our teams can safely get into those environments where there may be COVID-19 and also vulnerable people that, don't want us in the home, it makes the whole thing a lot more complex. And so our message to everyone is to, please, only flush toilet roll down the toilet and save us from having to go into those situations.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. We've had a few questions come in about manufacturers of wet wipes. So how did your campaign affect other commercial retailers of wet wipes? Did people modify their branding, their packaging? And we've got one here saying, how did companies differentiate in making face wipes and wet wipes? Are they using different materials now?
Alex, do you want to pick this one?
Yeah, Alex, do you want to pick this one?
Sorry, would you mind repeating that for me? Just dropped out there for a second.
Yeah, no worries. So we've had a few come in here about commercial retailers and wet wipe manufacturers. So we've seen a change in brands modifying their branding and packaging of their wet wipes. And have we seen a difference in materials being used?
Sure. So I think we've and I've noticed some other questions that have been asked around the sort of fine to flush standards that we mentioned earlier. So that was very much driven by the water company, our group that represents all the water and wastewater companies, called Water UK, and we designed a standard that basically put wet wipes to the test. So the companies before that were very much marking their own homework, and were subjecting wet wipes to a very aggressive test, probably the equivalent to chucking it off a waterfall or something. And sewers just don't work like that. They're very smooth. Imagine going along the kind of water ride at the local swimming pool, and weaving in and out of tubes. That's very much how sewers work. And so we designed a standard that tests it to simulate more of those conditions. And for many years, they weren't passing. I think, and we're putting pressure on those companies, both in the public, when people like myself or Stuart were talking when these stories cropped up, but also this all coincided with the plastics drive, and all the news on that, and that's also put them under real pressure, probably more so, to reinvent their products, to innovate their way out of the problem. And we're now starting to see the first few coming through that are actually passing the Water UK test, which was designed by the water companies.
Great, thank you. And Stuart, what was the biggest communications challenge that you faced, and how did you respond to this, and in what way?
So the biggest challenge for Whitechapel, or just in general?
The communication challenge that you had, so communicating the issue, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest issue for us is kind of getting the balance between being a nuisance to the operational team that are on site and getting on with the job, and actually spreading the message to the wider public through the media. I mean, we couldn't have done any more, and the team on the site were great. So, and again, when we felt like we were we'd pushed our luck too far, we moved across to Chinatown, and that was the main reason for doing that. And that just gave us space to carry on with the story and kind of be in our own little bubble. So the challenge normally is mixing between operations, keeping everyone safe, keeping journalists at a safe distance from what is actually sort of dangerous work going on. But yeah, I mean, we just dropped everything, and we just focused purely on this. I had a team back in the office fielding inquiries. We were putting together schedules. It wasn't so much of a challenge from our point of view. It was just an incredible wave, and we just kept going.
Great, cool, thank you. An interesting one here for you, Alex. Were the teams on the ground clearing the Fatberg pleased with the amount of coverage, or were they nervous around the intrusion?
I think for most of them initially, and there are actually some really good teams down there. I remember some of the characters initially were great, and Stuart and I looked after them. We were very conscious that it can be quite disruptive. So a free Subway sandwich or a bun from Greg's certainly went a long way. But a lot of our teams, the reason that they're having to go into these environments is because people are putting these things down the toilet that shouldn't be there. And actually, what you find within Thames is the people that work there really do care, and that's what came across with some of the characters that that we introduced everyone to as the story developed. And everyone cares, from Chris going down the sewer through to Stuart, myself, through to the executives in the company. People care, and so they were willing to accommodate us and to work with us, because they could understand that getting this story out and telling customers and showing them what they have to do every day, the dangers that they have to go through, the environments they have to go into, was a really important message to get out. But yeah, once one day turned into a week, which turned into a number of weeks, that's when we then moved to Chinatown, so they could have that that time and that space to get on with their job.
Yeah, okay, of course. Thank you. For Stuart, did you find the media uptake was better once you were more confident with language used?
I think so, yeah. I think we started pretty straight, because for us it was the next Fatberg story. Although, as I said at the start, it was the biggest, so we felt that something could happen, but we had no idea what was going to happen. So we just felt that we wanted to just keep it interesting, and we just thought by being a bit more risky, being more colourful, going through some words to use. As Alex said, we used to go up on the train, so we'd run through a script, try this, how about try that. What we didn't want to do was just give exactly the same interview every time, so we had to just keep moving. And we built confidence. So the coverage we were getting was all positive. It was all telling exactly the story that we wanted. There was no real issues. I mean, some people might have reported that it was the length of 3 Wembley pitches or 2 or 1. Some people said it's 150 tonnes, 130 tonnes, 100 tonnes. To be honest, the details on that didn't really matter. What mattered was the message that we were able to get across. And the overall message from everything we said was bin it, don't block it.
Cool. And were all the people who did interviews media trained?
No, so they weren't. I mean, Alex has done media training, but a lot of the other people, or all of the other people, had not been media trained. These were just the people that were working at the sites, and we would build the relationships, and we'd think, okay, well, this guy, he's going to be good, or how about if you just do this? Are you happy to do that? It was really, we kind of just went along with it as the days went past, and we just brought out the real characters. And again, that just added a different dimension, because if it was Alex every single time, as good as he is, it wouldn't have had the same legs, I don't think.
Yeah, for sure. And having the people as the face of the campaign that are close to the issue itself, I guess had a more personal touch in a way.
Exactly.
So we've got one here. Hi guys, how did you work with the practicalities of site safety and obviously the Fatberg being physically unsafe? Alex, can you answer that one?
So health and safety at Thames is always number one. It's how we kick off every single meeting with a safety moment, and we were really clear with this, that no matter how much the story grew and how the opportunities that gave us, we were never going to compromise health and safety, which is why when we were at the original site of the Whitechapel Fatberg, that's when we said, this sewer is not safe for journalists to go into, or anyone that's not trained, not even me or Stuart. So, we took steps like that. And of course, the actual Fatberg itself, is not something you want to be coming into contact with, the kind of things that people flush down the toilet. So again, all the right personal protective equipment was worn when people did handle it. And then when we moved to Chinatown, again, the health and safety was no different. So we scheduled in the different journalist teams throughout the day, so we didn't have too many people on site to deal with. And they were given a full training, a full toolbox talk before they then put on all their personal protective equipment. We had all the right escape teams, the escape sets in case anything went wrong to get them out. And they were down there, with our highly trained teams that knew exactly what they were doing. I do remember, I think it was Kathy Newman's interview. She was very eager to get hands-on with the Fatberg when she was down there. And I took her aside for a couple of minutes just to remind her that she needs to do everything the teams say, because, despite everyone trying to chase the story, and they were also looking for a new angle as the story progressed, to make sure that never compromised health and safety.
Cool, okay. And Stuart, you touched on earlier about there being some small inaccuracies, such as the weight and the size of the Fatberg. But were there any major inaccuracies reported in the coverage? And was it difficult to keep control of the story once it broke? Well,
so the initial story was supported by a press release that we issued on request. We published it on the website, but it was the same story that appeared in the Standard. Like I said, the inaccuracies didn't become a problem because all of the coverage was telling the story of what we were asking, really, which was to bin it, don't block it. We have in the past had issues with water supply, mainly, where if we lose water supply in sort of parts of London, then reporting can kind of go out of control. So that is much more of a challenge for us bringing it back. But for Fatberg stories, really, it's whatever is reported, as long as it's kind of got that sentiment, and we're asking people to not flush wet wipes, we're asking people to to not feed the Fatberg. Whatever it is, the details are not as important.
Okay.
But I must say, most of the reporting was pretty accurate.
Cool. So how do you keep the campaign fresh and innovative over coming months so consumers don't get complacent?
Yeah, so we're always looking for new angles. So last week we put a picture out of we call it rag, but this is where wet wipes and sanitary products all congeal together. And we put a picture out of a works in Beddington, which is sort of Croydon area. And that showed the amount of rag that had built up over a 3-week period. So a good picture allows us to spark the campaign again. A new Fatberg gives us another opportunity. We've also got a story to go out next week, which we found a razor down a sewer. And again, that gives us something else. So weird things that are found in the sewer, bits like that really just give us the impetus.
That was actually one of the questions here. What is the most bizarre thing found in a Fatberg, or down the sewers even?
Down in the sewers. Okay, Alex, you're probably better than me on this one.
Well, in terms of down the sewers in general, I think the weirdest one has to be we found 2 different dogs, haven't we? We've got a dog out, both living. I'm happy to report. One was a few weeks ago, and one was a year or 2 ago, which was Spencer the Spaniel in Abingdon, who'd I think had chased a rat up the sewer, and we helped get him out by digging up an AstroTurf hockey pitch. So yes, I think that's probably one of the weirdest things in the sewers in general. In terms of the Fatbergs, we found all kinds of stuff. I mean, in the Whitechapel one specifically, I remember the team pulling lumps out, and they were even finding the little blue pens that you find in betting stores. When we were filming the Whitechapel, the Fatberg autopsy. They just took a random chunk, broke it in half, and straight away you could see this sort of lattice of condoms and cotton buds and sanitary towels and all kinds of things. So I'll stop there because some people might be having a late lunch, I think.
We've also found things like cuddly toys. We had a really good story in Metro going back a couple of years where we had this lacy pink camisole that had pulled out, and one of the guys working on the sewage work sort of held it up next to him. And again, just that one picture can just re-spark the campaign.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. We've got a question here. What are the next steps for the Fatberg campaign post-COVID-19, assuming that there is a post-COVID-19? Is there anything we should look out for?
Well, as I said, we're looking for different angles. We're looking for pictures. So I should just say, my area at Thames Water is media relations. So all of the work that I do is for free. I don't pay for any of this coverage, but we are supported by a marketing team, and they're currently running radio adverts in our region. Just again, warning people, or not warning people, but just advising people to support the key workers and to bin it, don't block it. So we do have a small budget for marketing campaigns, but most of the work we do on the bin it, don't block it is earned media through my team.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take for you to go from finding the Fatberg to launching the campaign? Was it almost instantaneous, or?
Well, that's a good point, actually, because we work with a contractor called Lanes, and one of the guys who works for Lanes is notorious for posting pictures before he gives them to us on his LinkedIn profile. He gets loads of hits on his LinkedIn. So I think he might have posted it, and we said, "Oi, get that down." So he took it down. That then gave us, I think we probably got it on the Thursday. We wrote the story. Again, we know what we're doing. It's pretty much the same formula, just getting the facts and the details. We pulled together an infographic as well, which showed the size of it against Wembley Stadium and against Wales, like blue Wales. So very quick. And then we gave the story on the Friday, and it was published on the Tuesday.
Okay,
these things have turned around really quickly. Because again, they can. I mean, I think somebody's asked about this story could have gone a different way, and then this is the negative angle and how you turn a negative into a positive. So this story could have gone a different way because. Can you hear me? Anyway, this story could have gone a different way because there could have been the angle on how Thames Water is polluting, because I think there had been a couple of customers that suffered pollution as a result of this Fatberg. So for us, it was really important to turn what could have been a negative, take the risk, turn it into the positive story that we're able to do.
Great.
Charlie,
got a few more here. It was obviously a great proactive news story where you can get some key messagings out, but were there any risks associated with such a big news story?
Any risks? Well, I think we started off being what I would call normal Thames Water in our approach, and we took more risk as we got more confident, as we knew how popular the Fatberg could become, how it had become a celebrity in its own right. It was a thing. It was a monster. So people wanted to know what was going on with it. So we didn't want to just say the same thing over and over again. So for us to keep taking risks, keep pushing. We didn't go from like 0 to 100 in one go. It was a gradual, incremental risk-taking steps that we took. But I mean, when I say risks, it's using words like monster and using words like the beast and it's gross and rancid and just some of the quotes we used. It wasn't like extreme risks. It was just being more and more colourful with the language, I think.
Yeah. And
just on there, Annabelle said was there any negative press, and there wasn't any negative press at all.
Oh, great.
I think the thing that Stuart and I kind of always joke about looking back at that time was that every day we'd come back on the train and go, right, maybe we should stop there, because we were kind of expecting someone to try and then turn it into a negative story, but that day just didn't come, and the story just kept growing.
Brilliant. And on the topic of language, actually, what is your advice for the type of language used when dealing with tricky situations? I know a lot of people at this current time will be having to deal with some tricky situations of their own. So have you got any advice in terms of language?
Yes, I mean, the parallel I can draw on that is around when customers lose water supply. So when things do go wrong, it's how you respond, really. And I think for us, it's about being honest in our response, being honest in our language, setting clear expectations, and just showing that you're in control. You're in control of the message. You're giving regular, meaningful updates and information. You want customers to know that, to feel assured and trust you to get on with the job, because ultimately they're in your hands. Especially when something like water goes off, there's nothing they can really do to get it back on. They're putting their trust in us. So yeah, I think just being honest and sticking to your brand values.
Sure. Obviously, the Fatberg in itself is a negative thing. We've got somebody here ask, what are your top tips for turning a negative story into a positive one?
I think I just covered that one, and how you might have dropped off, Charlie, but it was really around how this story from the very start could have been quite negative, because it did flood a couple of customers. It did end up with sewage backing up into their homes. So had we not taken control of the story, they could have easily reported. They could have easily gone to the Evening Standard and complained to them about us. So we took control of the story. We got on the front foot, and we went out with our kind of brave statement around this. The reason that pollutions happen in these cases is because of consumer behaviour.
Sure. We've got a lot of other things here. Let's just have a scroll through. How was the Fatberg actually dispersed? Alex, can you answer that one?
Yeah, so normally this stuff goes to landfill, but actually with the amount that we had, and again, wanting to also, use it as an opportunity to talk about the company's green credentials. Not many people know that we produce the most renewable energy within the M25. Certainly used to be enough to power a city the size of Oxford. I think we're beyond that now, aren't we, Stuart? We're bigger than that now. And so what we did is we worked with a company in the UK who was actually able to take the Fatberg and turn it into biofuel, which allowed us to then give yet another angle that Stuart mentioned earlier in terms of turning it into renewable energy. And it was really interesting because we had some quite long and hard conversations around, well, we wouldn't want people to think that actually it's okay to flush these things down the toilet or put them down the sink because Thames will just turn it into a renewable energy. So we were kind of really torn with that one, but we decided that actually we could get the story out, get some more coverage, and whilst talking about the renewable energy, still get that message through that this is not the right way to do that, and get the bin it, don't block it message out.
Brilliant, thank you. So I think that's all we have time for today in terms of questions. So before we move on, I'd just like to say thank you to you guys. It was brilliant, and thank you for answering all those questions. Before we go, I'd just like to mention our next webinar. It's what the state of the media means for your comms strategy. Make sure you tune into that one on the 23rd of April for some insights into the media this year, including the COVID-19 impact. I hope you enjoyed today's session and take away some learnings that you can apply to your PR and comms moving forward. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to Stuart and Alex. It's been brilliant. It's been really insightful, so thank you. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Cheers.